going to do with all the bulbs in the fall. Today, I'm here with Kathy Schmidt, who is a master gardener, and I'm Joyce Riney, and we want to talk to you about all the bulbs that need to come up out of the ground. One of those types of bulbs we call tinder bulbs. So Kathy's going to tell us what a tinder bulb is.
A tinder bulb is one that does not withstand freezing temperatures. And there are two kinds. One needs moisture, slight moisture when you protect it for the winter. The other can be dried out.
Okay, and when you go to take these bulbs up out of the ground, what kind of process do you normally use?
Well, this year, thanks to all the rain, it's been easy to dig up, but you want to save as much root as you can. You want to protect the bulb itself, because if you nick the bulb or damage it, it probably won't survive till next year. The bulbs I have here are water canna or canna, which takes a lot of moisture, and elephant ear or caladium.
When you get ready to get the bulbs up out of the ground, how much of the tissue on the plant do you actually leave in order to keep the bulb intact?
And generally, you leave about 4 to 6 inches of the stem. And then this will be two different bulbs, and you want to separate that. Some people can do that with their hands, but I'm not strong enough. You can use a fork, but the best way, particularly for something like this that's been at the edge of a pond and is definitely root bound and lots of dirt, I use a pruning saw and just saw through with the hope that I won't ruin too many bulbs. And I'll let Joyce kind of pick this apart for me. And so we may get 1 or 2 bulbs from that. After we get them separated, then we need to let them dry. And we'll do that on newspaper. We need to do it in the house or in a warm garage. 65 to 80 degree temperature is ideal. Some bulbs only take 3 to 4 days to dry. Others take a couple weeks, and cannas sometimes take a couple weeks. Gladiola may take a couple weeks as well. The other thing to do is try and get most of the dirt off the plant without damaging the roots.
And then when you actually get around to setting those up to dry, you need to allow a certain amount of time and a certain kind of medium to put those in. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The most commonly used is peat moss. If you're using the canna or gladiolus or dahlias, you want this to be slightly moistened. You put it in a ventilated container like a cardboard box that has some holes in it, and then can check that periodically. If it looks dry or the bulbs start to look withered, then you'll use a spray bottle of water to spray that. The caladium and calla lilies are another example. You can put in peat moss or vermiculite, and you can use that also for the moist bulbs. But you can also use a mesh bag or a bag with holes. Just close it and make sure you label it so you remember what the bulbs are, and that can just hang in the basement.
And when you get finished getting them in their medium and you set them aside, do you need to go back and check on them, or are you just finished for the winter?
Periodically, probably once every 3-4 weeks, you need to look at them, particularly with the ones that require the moisture, and just spray. If you see things that look rotten or diseased, you want to get rid of those. And when you put them in your box or container, particularly these, you want to have them 1/2 inch apart so that if one's diseased, it won't spread it to all the other ones.
One of the great benefits of knowing how to take care of your bulbs after you get them out of the ground and how to overwinter those tinder bulbs is that you're going to have a lot more bulbs in the spring when you get ready to put things in the ground. So it's a real money-saving method to maintain your bulbs, but it also helps you kind of understand what all to do with the bulbs and how to use those time and time again. So you get a lot of good work out of all the bulbs. Okay, now we want to talk a little bit about the bulbs that can stand the winter and the bulbs that a lot of people are just putting in the ground. We want to give you another option today, and that is planting some bulbs in a container garden. And Kathy has a great idea about how to do this.
Okay, well, what we're going to do is take a pot, and to decide what size pot you need to know how many bulbs and how deep they are. And I think the important thing to know is how deep you plant the bulbs. But first, with the container, you want at least 3 inches of potting mix on the bottom below where your lowest bulbs are. And the idea of this whole planter is that you will have blooms from early spring through the start of summer, because they all mature at different times. So this is just a measuring stick. I've measured down. I have 3 inches of dirt. You want about 1 inch at the rim that you don't have soil. So my deepest roots I'm going to plant today are 6 to 8 inches. So I've taken the soil out.
And I have 3 different kinds of bulbs here that are marked as being 6-inch bulbs. And among those I have some allium, I also have some daffodil, and then over here I have some tulips. So what would you like me to pass over to you?
I'm going to start with the allium because they have bigger leaves and they need to be further apart. And when you read a label, if you'll hand me the sign, if you buy these at a big box store, or preferably order them from a nursery, each bag will have information about the plant. For instance, the hyacinths, it's a mix of various colors, blooms early to mid-spring. It's sun to part shade. This will be mostly sun during the day. And the height, or the plant depth, is 4 inches, and spacing is 4 to 8 inches. So this tells you kind of how to plant. With the alliums, they get to be 3 feet tall, and they're the ones that have kind of a big bulb on the top in different colors. And you can plant those, it says 12 to 18 inches deep. But because we're doing it in a container, we can have them a little bit closer. This is the bulb. You always want to plant where the roots are side down. And the size of bulbs does matter. The bigger the bulb you get, the better flowers you have. Now if you go to one of the big box stores or the cheaper bulbs, they'll be smaller. And they measure the size of a bulb in centimeters, and they measure it by the circumference, or the measure around the center part of the bulb. So that these will be bigger, but landscapers who are trying to get a huge effect will use smaller bulbs because they can get a lot more planted. So I'm going to plant these I'm going to put about 4 of these, or 5, around the edges on the bottom. And again, you want to make sure you don't have damaged bulbs because they may not survive.
So the next kind we have here are the tulips, and then the daffodil. Do you want tulips?
Okay, we'll do tulips, and we're putting those in the same place that we have. So we'll just mix those in. And again, since we'll plant these in the ground after they're done blooming this year, because they probably won't do well in a container a second year. It's kind of like bulbs you forced in the house. They're much better to be put in the ground where they have better chance of growing and developing. So I'm just kind of filling this layer up. Okay. Now we're going to do daffodils. And I have 2 kinds of daffodils. I have one that I ordered, which is a scented daffodil, and again you can see how big it is. I have some I dug at my farm which have naturalized, and they're much smaller, These earlier in the spring, the squirrels dug up, and I just dried them, and I'm going to put them in too because they'll just look a little different. But because they're small, I won't plant them quite as deeply. And I left the green plant in front just for interest. It'll die back in the winter, but it comes back. It's called Creeping Jenny, and it just adds a little color. At this point, I'm going to put an inch or two of soil over the bulbs I've planted, then we'll do our next row.
If you were to look inside this pot, you would see that it's just almost solid bulb. I mean, they're not touching one another, but it really is compact with a lot of bulbs. And so she's putting in her layer of dirt, and she'll be ready to go to the next step down in terms of size with the bulbs. And so we have over here now some hyacinths, and we also have some other 5-inch tulips. So what would
I'm
you
going to
like?
start with the hyacinths. And this is a mixture, that's why the bulbs are different color. And they have a wonderful scent, unless you're allergic to them.
And while you're doing that, can you tell us a little bit about your choice of container? Are there some containers that are not so good for doing this, or what can you tell us about that?
In our climate, which is zone 6, we do get winters where we might get into the teens, rarely below 0. So it's better not to use an expensive ceramic pot or a thin plastic pot. Terracotta is probably okay. This is a metal pot, so nothing can hurt. It is important that there's drainage, and you want to make sure your pot is wide enough so that you can get all your plants in for a nice display. Now this one's not real deep. I have some that are very deep, and you don't need to waste all your money on potting soil if it's, 14 inches deep. You can put some old empty plastic water bottles or styrofoam in the bottom to fill it up, and then if you need to move it, it's not so heavy. I have this on a roller, so I don't have to lift the pot because I'm at an age where I can't lift heavy pots anymore. So I'm putting the different colors in. So we should get a nice display. And even though they're on top of the other bulbs, they'll move around, and as they grow, they'll come up through this.
Now, are you filling that whole row up, or are you going to save any room for these 5-inch tulips?
I have room for the tulips.
Okay, I'm just going to hand you the bag there.
One thing to know is that probably it's best not to leave this out where there's lots of wind. So I'm going to take mine close to the house so to keep it from the hard freezes. Our extension agent said if you're not using a big pot, you can just bury it in the ground, and that will protect them also. If it gets really, really cold, you may want to take it in the garage, but you don't want it to be over 50 degrees because then they'll start to develop and send up shoots, and you'll lose your plant. So you can put it in a cold garage or on the east side of the house, since most of our winds come from the west. And I'll put mine right next to the door so that if it's a really dry winter, I can water it from within the house.
I wish I had started counting when we were doing this. How many bulbs you have put into that one pot. I would never have thought that you could put that many bulbs into one pot.
Well, we'll see. I had kind of an ordering frenzy when I found a couple mail order places that sent these beautiful big bulbs as opposed to the little ones I had been buying.
So now you're ready for another layer of dirt?
I'm going to put another layer of dirt. And one of the nice things about this, and you'll see on your bag labels when you get them, is they bloom at different times, early, medium, late spring to early summer. So if this does well, this pot should be good through mid-June, when you might want to put some of your annuals in. And if it doesn't come up or you have empty places, just stick a little annual in. It'll look good.
I can't imagine that pot's going to have any empty spaces.
We'll see.
Okay, and now we have the crocus.
Crocus.
And they're just 2 to 3 inches tall, so that kind of finishes off a little bit the top of the.
And as you see, these are very
pot.
small. They look like acorns, and squirrels love them. They'll just go down about 2 inches beneath the soil. So I'm going to push them down a little bit since I put a little extra soil in. And they're the first to bloom sometimes in late February, certainly early March. There's some other bulbs like muscari, which I've never grown, and some of the snowdrops. I just think they're so small to put in the dirt. It's too much digging for me. But with these planters, not a bad idea.
It's also hard when they're out in a location where you have to mow. They're so low to the ground, and it's very tedious to try to pull weeds or grass away from crocus when they're in the ground like that. This is a much more efficient way, I think, to plant them, and really enjoy the looks of the crocus when they first come up, because it's always here, the first thing you see in the springtime. So
The nice
that's gonna
thing
be
for
great.
me having it on the deck is that because our house is kind of 6 feet above the ground level, I wouldn't see the crocus unless I walked outside.
Uh-huh.
With this here, or if I move it away as spring comes, I'll be able to just look out my door and see the beautiful blossoms.
Okay, so you have your last layer on of the your medium, and everything is looking good. Is there anything else you want to do before you finish and walk away from your planter?
I'm probably going to put a layer of mulch over this just to protect it when it rains so the dirt doesn't all splatter out. But most importantly, I'm going to use this wire mesh because I have a problem with squirrels. And I'll put this around and tie it down after the show because squirrels love bulbs and I don't love the squirrels. And then I'll water it now unless it rains today. And then generally you won't need to water it unless it's very, very dry.
We hope this has been a beneficial discussion today for you to see what you can do with all of your bulbs and maybe using them in a container. I hadn't thought of it before, but it looks like a great idea. So you might want to give that a try. This is Kathy and Joyce, and we are here with the Master Gardener information, sharing that with everybody in Davis County.